First of all, I would like to welcome you all for this webinar. I will introduce now to our speaker, Mr. Hemal Naik. He is a researcher pursuing PhD at Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior and Technical University of Munich. He is also a biomedical engineer and computer scientist. His main interest is in tech development for studying various animals, and he is actively involved in development of new scientific collaborations with many Indian institutes. So I would like to welcome Mr. Hemal Naik on behalf of Bombay Natural History Society. And before we move on to the main session, I would like to brief you about our organization, Bombay Natural History Society. Bombay Natural History Society was founded in year 1883 and is one of the largest largest organization which is engaged in conservation and biodiversity research. Uh, the photo which we are all seeing here is our headquarters, which is called Hornbill House, and is situated in Fort area of Mumbai. So you may please visit our head office for more information once these lockdown conditions are lifted. Or for more information, you can also visit our website www.bnhs.org. Next slide, sir, please. Okay, so this is Conservation Education Center, which is another branch of BNHS, which is in Goregaon Film City. It works towards creating awareness about nature among students, government employees, and all the people. It also arranges diverse activities like nature trails, workshops, and various certificate courses in biodiversity study. So for more information related to these courses, you may contact on CEC Mumbai @bnhs.org. Sir, next slide. Okay, so Environmental Information System, or in short ENVIS, was established in year 1996. It is supported by Ministry of Climate Change, Forest and Environment. Uh, uh, the basic uh, the basic objective behind establishment was to create various data banks on birds and related areas. We also publish and distribute Buceros, which is very informative newsletter, and it's free of cost. Then we upload various data banks on websites. Also, we conduct various certificate courses under Green Skill Development Program, and we also are working now on grids based decision support system. So for more information and to get more knowledge regarding avian ecology, you may please visit our BNHS ENVIS website. And now I request our speaker, Mr. Hemal Naik, to continue the further session. Thank you.
Thank you. Viraj, it would be helpful if you can mute your mic. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So welcome to this session. And I'm really delighted and very happy that I get to give this talk. So how can we know what animals know and why do we care? First, I would like to point out the relationship between India and Max Planck. So as Viraj mentioned already, Max Planck Institute is a research institute in Germany, and we have institutes for various kind of research, fundamental research and applied research, physics, chemistry, and all different fields. I belong to the institute called Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior. And from last 3 years, I have been doing my PhD studies with them. Besides doing that, I have also been lucky enough to be involved in collaboration activities. So Max Planck, as a society, has MOU with the government of India for tech development and collaboration. And by that means, we are trying to further increase our collaboration with different research institutes in India. So past 3 years, I have been to Wildlife Institute of India. We have a collaborator, Dr. Suresh Kumar from there, who works on the Amur Falcon project. I will mention that briefly towards the end. I was also this year, just before the lockdown started, I was also in India as part of Indo-German cultural delegation, where the delegation came from the government of Baden-Württemberg, and it was a collaboration between state where our institute is and the state of Maharashtra. So we came to different places in Maharashtra to talk about collaboration and how Germany and India can not only do scientific collaboration but also art collaboration, and how can we bring these things together. So this is the brief background. Now, if you can see on this is where our institute is located. This is a town called Konstanz, which is on Germany-Swiss border. It's a very nice, quiet town, especially during these kind of times of pandemic, low people density. So let me begin, first of all, by telling that this institute was formed by Konrad Lorenz, who you can see in the picture, and with him Nicolas Steenbergen. Was both of them were founders of, or could be said one of the founders of this field of methods of ethology, or the way we study animal behavior these days. And they got a Nobel Prize for it. So our institute dates back to those times when Konrad Lorenz started it in the first in Munich. So behavior as an engineer, when I came to this institute, I learned that mainly there are these 4 aspects of behavior that everyone studies. So no matter which particular topic you pick in the behavior, we are studying these 4 questions very broadly. So when we talk about, we say that we study animal behavior, either we are studying an aspect which allows us to know what is this behavior for. So how does it help the animal to survive? How does it work? Which is the mechanism of the behavior. How did it evolve? That means what were the conditions that allowed an animal to have such a behavior, any behavior for that matter. And ontogeny of the behavior, that means how does a particular behavior change during the lifetime of the animal. And within these broad topics, our institute, basically we have 3 directors, 3 departments. Professor Wikensky leads the migration department. Professor Ian Cousin leads the collective behavior department. And Professor Meg Crawford leads animal ecology of animal societies. So today my talk to you is briefly touching upon the research that we do as a whole institute within these 3 different departments. And therefore I call it as a big thali of behavior research. So whatever I present today is not work of a single individual or a single department. This work is mostly result of years of collaboration between global scientists. So people who work here, people from different corners of the world who work with us to develop certain technologies and methods, the way we study behavior. So therefore, me today is just a person who is presenting this thali to you, but you should keep in mind that as all research goes, it has a long lineage and a lot of people have worked towards it. So for sake of simplicity, what I have done in the talks is that on the left side in the corner, you will always find a Google keyword. That means if you're more interested in that topic, you can put that keyword along with the right side corner research group keyword. That will probably most likely lead you to a web page or a YouTube video for that particular research if you are more interested. Because as I said, I'm going to present a range of different research projects and technologies today. So now that introduction is over, let me start with the part 1. So as the topic of the title says, that how can we know what animals know? But first we have to know what do animals know, like what does it mean? So if you take it in a context of migration, so here you can see in the video that it shows basically different animals which are tagged by GPS sensors who are moving across different continents of the globe, uh, between Asia, Africa, and different flyways. So if you're an animal, what kind of knowledge you have must have. If you're migrating, what kind of knowledge you must have? You must know where to go, you must know how to get there, and you must know what is important for you to understand to be able to reach from one place to another. So these are briefly, broadly, some of the questions that we address. This is the knowledge. For example, in a broader context, here you see a map of bird migration, land-based or water-based, global. There are the main pathways. India specifically, part of big migrating pathways of about 3 layers. Here you can see that come across. So India is one of the places where we see a lot of migration. Most of you know that there are more than 350 species migrating to India every year in winter. Now, the other part is collective behavior. That means if you are an animal who is living in a group, then you have to make, we see in nature, as you can see in this video, different patterns that are created in nature, flocks of birds, schools of fishes. Now, each individual makes a decision in the group where it counts, and these patterns are the emerging property of such behaviors. So that means how to, from if you know from an individual perspective, then how do you make a decision, and when do you make a decision? What do you think of decision for your neighbors? That is the knowledge that the animal has, or the animal has to gain in order to create these patterns. So we try to study this aspect of it. One of the very relevant examples would be, as you can see in the videos, and probably if you are hearing from the news, we are in the middle of a crisis in India with a huge locust swarm, right? So this is one of the important research topics that the collective behavior department here works on, both in the in the wild and in the lab. That how do these swarms happen? What are each? How does each individual make certain kind of decisions, which then contribute towards this swarming behavior? And these are very important, as we know that these insects, we have barely have any information about how to control them or how things, because now most of the times what we do is we use pesticides, which is a solution, but that's not the final solution we want to have. We want to be able to predict when this is going to happen, or we want to know more about how this is happening, because clearly this is a risk. So these are the collective emerging patterns that we are interested in studying. Now, when we talk about knowledge of animal, then it also comes about when different animals are living in different societies, right? So if you are an animal living in a society, why do you want to be in a group? Or what do you have to know to be in a group? Like as an individual, what are the skills that you have to learn? What are the skills that you can learn from your group members? Or how to survive in a group? So these are the questions that from research perspective, we ask that this is the knowledge that animals have, but how do we obtain this knowledge? So here also you get one example of white-faced capuchin monkeys. This is studied in the ecology department, where these monkeys have learned to crack nuts using the stones. Now, how did they evolve this way? How is this knowledge being passed on in the group? And in order to do that, we need to be able to keep track of the whole group, and how have long-term studies to answer these questions about how the society is developing, and how they, if at all, they have a culture, or how they are transferring knowledge to each other. So all in all and together, as we saw that these animals survive based on the knowledge that they have, no matter if they are migrating or if they are doing group behavior as a collectives, or if they are living in larger societies. Sometimes all three aspects come in together, where you are an individual which is living in a society and you are migrating as well. And there, all these three aspects come in important as an animal to be able to survive. So that part is something that tells us about what is the knowledge that these animals have. And but now the question comes that when we try to do the research, what how can we know that what do they know? That means how can we study them in order to understand what is happening when they are migrating or when they are making these patterns. So we use a lot nowadays. There are two ways of studying animals, right? One is to study them in the wild, in the natural habitat. So first I will show you the technologies that are being used at our institute, and some are being developed at the institute in order to study these phenomena. So first I will talk about the technologies which we use for studying animals in the wild. Here you can see a drone-based images and a tag being put on a cow. So one of the first and important technologies that is really growing rapidly in use these days is biologging techniques. So we use various kind of biologgers, which include radio tagging, GPS sensors, which have various kind of information, accelerometer, magnetometer, sometimes cameras, heart rate logger, or even audio loggers to be able to understand voice or to be able to record the sound of these animals. Here you can see various animals in the images which are logged with these different kind of biologgers. Now, once you have these biologgers, what are you able to do? So, for example, here you have this example that when we tagged about 500 storks in Germany and we tracked their migration, we know from Germany how are they going to Africa, what are the routes that they are taking, which parts they are going through. Let us see another example of more localized migration. In Africa, you see the buffaloes, which are migrating through. Now it's going again towards the south. So these sensors are being used in order to gain very detailed, fine scale information about how the animal is moving across the space, how the animal is using the landscape, and it's giving the information about what are the routes that they are taking. This is extremely vital in order to understand how is the overall migration pattern happening and how are the animals being able to use this information. So now I will talk about one of the projects that has been going on since last 15 years at the Institute, which is taking these biologging technologies to a next level. So very fortunately, last year, we have the project is in the testing phase. So you can check out more details about it. The project is called ICARUS. The idea is that whenever we tried to do traditional tracking by means of putting radio collars or putting these GPS sensors on animals, often there was this problem that they use either radio frequency, that means you have to follow them with an antenna. This is what we use for example, tiger tracking and other tracking in India. There's another form which is GSM based. So when it gets the GSM phone network, it sends us the messages. So that's how we get information about which areas this animal is going into with the GPS locations and so on and so forth. However, we were always missing out on more details. For example, if there are animals which are passing the Himalayas or passing these regions in Siberia where there is no phone network, then it was often difficult to obtain this information. So that's where the idea came to create a new kind of tracking technology where a tag can directly communicate with the satellite, and we can put it on large group of animals, and with that we can get information about how they are migrating. So the tag has to be sufficiently small for that. That's why we aim to make it less than 5 grams. And on the right side, you see all these different sensors that we put onto it. Now, what last year we were able to send, so we also had to design the antenna for, so when you have a tag which transmits the data, it has to have a receiver somewhere, right? So this receiver was commissioned to be on the International Space Station. So now this project is in its testing phase. And now in the video, we'll show the small demonstration of how this project is supposed to work. So here is the antenna on the ISS, which will receive the data from the tag. And here you can see that as the ISS passing through the Earth, you have these different animals which have these tags which are sending data. And this is the way in which we can collect data globally without any problem for different kind of animals. And this tag is really small. So many small animals like small songbirds and other animals can wear these tags without any problems. And this is how we get information in detail about large groups of animals on how they are moving through the space. We, of course, designed different kind of tags for this. One of the greater challenges in recent technologies is how to design tags or same technology of tags which fit for different kind of animals. So recently, what the work at the institute has been that we're designing new kind of tags which fit different kind of animals. So here you see different kind of models for mammals, birds, fish, bigger birds, smaller birds, and these, some of them are already developed and deployed, and some are in development phase. So as I said, that the test phase is going on right now. It is a very exciting time for all of us because now this year the machine has on the ISS computer has checked out. So right now we are working with the International Space Station, the Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos, the European Space Agency, in order to test how the signals are coming and going. And then there are these various projects which will take place as part of the first initiative. However, this initiative would not be only limited to research that we are doing. Again, I would like to stress that this research effort is effort from a global collaboration. So that means that once the technology is out, it will be available for everybody to use and to gather information, because as we know, migration, as I've already shown before, it's a global phenomenon. It's not restricted to only one country or one species, and therefore the global community has to come together. So this is the technology, one of the technologies that being developed. Of course, in order to then visualize these technology and to be able to use the information that we are, because we get tons of information like acceleration, magnetometer, and so on and so forth. How do we see that data? How do we use that? And how do we interpret it? So we have also been working to create different modules. Like for example, Animove is a website where you can go and check out open data for all the movements of these animals. There is an animal tracker app which you can download, and you can see live data coming from various animals. And there are Animove courses which we organize for learning how to get these understanding or how to get behavior understanding from the technology, from the sensor data that we get. Of course, but this technology is sometimes not enough. When when we are when we are having GPS sensors, what we also want is remote sensing technology to combine them together. So here you see an example where a large group of baboons were tagged, and then we took the aerial imaging information, and we are able to combine this information to actually see how this group is interacting with the terrestrial space. So how, not only how they are interacting with themselves, but also how they use their space around them. Another technique, of course, sometimes if you have a large group, then it is very difficult to be able to tag them. Sometimes they are very vulnerable animals and you do not want to catch them. And therefore, we are forced to develop new technologies. So here you see work of these two researchers, Ben Koger and Blair Costello, where they have on their project in Kenya, where they use aerial imagery. That means we take video footages from drones and then design computer vision algorithms, which are automatically able to track these animals moving through the space. So, and then we can combine this information with the 3D maps that we have of the landscape and create similar kind of data, which we showed previously with baboon, without putting any tags on them. Of course, it has its own limitations. However, this is something which is very, very new technology, and we are super excited to see what results comes out of there. Again, now, oops, yeah. So that was using cameras in the land. But what about studying animals, marine creatures? So here you can see one of the projects in which reef behavior of themselves fish is being studied by 3 different cameras. Now, why 3 different cameras? Because traditionally, many times, as I saw in a previous video, we observe animals moving as a from a top-down view where you get just 2-dimensional information. Here, when we put 3 different cameras, we can get 3-dimensional information. Like here, you can see in the video. Uh, this is very important to develop such technologies because animals access their environment in 3 dimension like we do, and therefore, in order to understand what they are doing, we should also be able to see how they are moving in the space. So this is one of the methods in which we can get these 3-dimensional information. Now, some of the technology requires the researchers to be involved. I'm sorry, on the right corner, there's a wrong information. I apologize for that. This project is not from the collective behavior department, but rather migration department. However, so this image that you are seeing is a beaver from somebody's backyard. So we've also been working on ideas on how can we uh, develop scientific, or how can we bring new scientific concepts, but also use help of citizens to doing such projects. So as I'm showing all these technologies with sensors and other things, that requires experts to work with it. However, here what we've done is that around the 100-kilometer radius of our institute, we've distributed small camera traps for people to put in their backyards. And this is the one image from that. And this project aim is to not only create general awareness about what are the animals living near us, but also try to find scientific findings from there, that how are the animals, wild animals, accessing this space, what are the times they are accessing this space, and how is the total information exchange happening. Now this, oops. So far so good about the wild experiments, but also it is very important for for us to learn what are the detailed behavior aspects of the animals, and therefore we conduct a lot of experiments and develop different kind of technologies to study detailed behavior of these animals. Here you are seeing a group of termites moving together. And what we are able to do now is, without putting any marker on this large group of animals, we can record them from hours and hours and observe their behavior. On the left side, you can see we can also track the posture. That means now we have the technology that we can really know which individual is interacting with which individual and how all these individuals are moving through the space. This is super exciting because this kind of resolution we were never able to gain before. And with this, we can answer many questions about how these social organizations happen in such small species. Similar methods are the good parties that are applicable to other species as well. So if you want to study colony of ants or a group of fishes, it is also possible using the same softwares. And while we develop them, we are also sharing them at the same time, which makes these technology available for others. We are using the game visualization techniques. So here you can see a video in which it shows that the focal individual in the red, marked in the red, it shows how many other individuals this individual is able to see. This is super important if you want to, for example, learn how is this animal making any decision. And while making these decisions, what are the other individuals in the visual field of this animal? Because when they are behaving as a group, you want to know how much information they are getting from the group and what are the factors on which they make such decisions. Now, when we put different kind of fishes in the lab, we also have to design different kind of methods where we can give them visual stimuli. So here you can see one of the experiments where we have a very large tank and we are able to put different kind of projections on this tank. Now in these, you can see that while we change these projection patterns, the school of the fish is able to resolve the direction of the motion and then it rotates in the direction of the given stimuli. This is very exciting. And now, as we have the tracking technology that I've showed you before, we are able to investigate these behaviors on how they are happening and how a group of animals are solving a certain problem, not individually, but as a group. While we talk about animals making decisions in a group, we still don't have, for example, one could argue that we don't exactly know how the animal is obtaining information and which information it's making decision on. And that's where the next technology comes into picture, where now we are using these unique virtual reality technology. What is so virtual reality is for humans, if you have heard from gaming industry or other industries, is that you put someone in an environment where you create a completely virtual world, like the movie Matrix, where everything that you see is unreal, but based on the visual pictures, it looks very real. So we can put a fish in a fishbowl where we can make the fish think that it's swimming in an open sea. And then we can create such visuals for the fish such that we can understand how it is making decisions. It's the same with the locust that you see in the video, that the locust is given different kind of options, and then you can really tease apart these questions of how these insects are making such decisions, or these animals, what are the factors involved in making individualistic decisions. This is super exciting technology. Again, but now we move forward and we have created another, when we study movement of animals in different environments. Of course, again, as I mentioned before, studying in a group in a 3D is very important. And therefore, it is also very important to know how are we able to track them. So here you can see that we have designed a facility which has about 36 cameras. This facility is typically used in movie making, where they want to make animation for animation movies, where a person can move and then all the body parts can be tracked to do various kind of animations. We have used that technology, put this there, and this facility we use to study movement of large group of animals. For example, here you will see in the video, this is a bat with a marker and it's moving through this 3D space, and we are able to completely visualize the flying pattern of the bat. And not only one, but we can put multiple bats and do the same. This is very exciting because now we have these large space in which we can put multiple bats together or multiple birds together or other species. And then we can ask these questions. So for example, here you are seeing in the image that we have used this facility to track pigeons, starlings, hawk moths, and even whip spiders. Now, so this facility is more or less like a tool where we can put different individuals and we can track their motion, track how they are interacting with each other, and also record their sounds. When we put all this information together, we can really find out how these groups are behaving the way they behave and how are these fascinating patterns emerging from different kind of behaviors. So that brings me to the third part, where now we talked about what is the knowledge that these animals have, what are the methods that we are using to understand what knowledge animals are using. But then it comes to the point where why should we care? Why do we bother about doing all these things? There are two aspects of it. First, I will go into research aspects of it. So here you see from one of the findings from the experiment is that we showed that the white storks, when they are migrating towards Africa, because of these high resolution data techniques, now we are able to understand how they are doing it, because it's a long migration, it costs a lot. So these storks are effectively able to use the wind thermals, which are basically uh, carrying them to Africa. And this is where interesting aspect of migration and collective behavior also comes together, because we learned that the experienced individuals are much better at finding these wind currents, which will carry them to Africa. And the young birds actually follow these adult birds in order to reach their destination, because every year as the breeding season passes, there are new individuals who don't know how to get there, but then they work out together in this nice fashion, and together they migrate towards their destination. We are also able to put the aspect of collective behavior and societies together, where, for example, here, when this is the data from the group of baboons, where we learned that contrary to the traditional thinking, where uh, where it was generally thought that a group leader always makes a decision on where to go, we learned that it's actually not true. When the group of baboons are going for foraging in the society, even though they have different hierarchies, the food decisions are very much democratic, and it really depends on how many individuals want to go in which direction. And these are some key insights that we get from having such studies. Now, from the mechanistic point of view, so as I explained a lot of collective behavior stuff, how is that interesting I'm bringing in a new perspective here, that of course we study these animals for the sake of science or sake of learning other things, but also when we learn how these animals are able to form these nice, wonderful patterns, we are able to replicate it. So as you can see in this video, it shows that there are different societies of small animals and insects or fishes doing these wonderful patterns. And once we learn these principles of collective behavior from them, we can design technology which actually works in the similar way. And we can design these robotic agents, which would be in future can be used for multiple applications. This specific work, we do not do such work, but this is just a general thought on application towards how the findings from the animal world can be actually used to develop technology. There are, of course, other findings where we learn that how are these animals evolving, or how these animals have evolved to evolve it to show these behavior patterns. How are they migrating from one place to another? What are the ecology service that they are providing? So if we see many animals, for example, bats or agoutis, you can see in this image, that they are eating these fruits and then they are dispersing this throughout the forest, which leads to growth of new forests and so on. And this is really important in order to understand how uh, to in order to understand how these animals are interacting and how are we able to understand that what is happening in the natural world. But of course, eventually when we move slightly away from biological interests and we want to look at the big picture, that how are these studies? So when we study migration, we study collective behavior, we put, or societies, we put things together. And what is the big picture behind it? So in the big picture, what we learn from such studies is that we learn important information about conservation, which means that when we know that the animals are going through these particular routes or they are going through these particular areas, we have accurate information about what is the landscape that they are accessing. If they are dying in a particular area, then we can have information of what is happening there, and therefore we can protect them and control such activities or have an eye on. So it's really important, if we want to protect some species, to be able to know what is happening with them. And because they're migrating through different countries and different continents, it's also important to know what is happening where. Here you can see this data coming from Himalayan vulture, the collaboration from the Bhutanese researchers. And here, because of the logging, we were able to first time understand that the vultures are not only, which are tagged in Bhutan, are not only remaining in that area, but they can go all the way to Mongolia. This was something exceptional, which we don't know before. And this is something why we need to know that how these technologies can help us to understand these aspects. Of course, disease transmission. Now, this is a very hot topic these days. I don't have to give more information about it. Everyone is sitting at home in the pandemic situation, but this is true that when we have disease transmissions happening, especially through zoonotic diseases, where now the wild animals are coming into contact with domestic animals, and then from domestic animals the diseases are probably coming to humans. We have to be able to understand how this movement is happening and how different animals are interacting with each other. So without having such technologies for sort of, let me use the word, contact tracing, uh, we are not able to understand how the global transmission of diseases is happening. Food safety issues. So as I mentioned before, uh, again, that we are dealing with the locust swarms this year, but this is not a new problem for African countries. African countries have been having locust swarms from, sorry for the video, um, from years and years, and still there is a lot less research done in this topic. So we need to learn more about these kind of movements because now it's globally threatening the food security of many countries. Wildlife crimes. So wildlife trafficking is one of the third biggest crimes in the world. I thought in India, of course, we have a lot of issues with poaching. We have a lot of issues with conflicts with animals, leopards, elephants, tigers, and we often have to lose our wildlife because of that. And that is not only the story of India, that is a global story. Here on the top right, you see this very famous Cecil the lion image. Actually, this lion was hunted, and because it had a logger on it, the scientists were able to, or the facility at the national park was quickly aware of what happened to the lion, and then they were able to catch the person who killed the lion. So it is also very important to now try to understand that when these technologies are available, how do we use them in context of the problems that we have, no matter if the problem is in India or in Germany or anywhere else. How can we use these biologging technologies or camera trapping technologies to reduce this friction or to give the space to the wildlife? So here, for example, you can see a big collaboration-based paper on which basically showed that human use of the landscape is now giving less and less space to the animals. Now, these kind of studies are only possible when a lot of researchers come together, put the data on, but also use these kind of technologies. This picture is definitely from Mumbai, so many people might know as our problems with the leopards in National Park. Wildlife, again, uh, problems with ivory from Africa to other places. I mean, also this leads to long-term impacts because a lot of mafia or militia use such wildlife trading to actually get money and then buy the weapons and do the conflicts. So it is important to keep the tab on such activities. When we use all these technologies, one of the very important thing that happens is that we get these informations about how these animals are using an area, how these animals are, which areas they are going to. And when we know it, we can put these issues out and we can get support of the policymakers. So while we are trying to protect our wildlife and while we are trying to voice out against illegal mining or illegal excavations and stuff, without having a scientific backing, we cannot usually do that. So that is really important to use the technology. So here, these pictures are actually from the ICARUS project that when the German chancellor met the director and showed quite interest in supporting these technologies by looking at the potential of what this technology can do and such space collaboration can bring towards global science and wildlife protection. Of course, when we are using such technologies, we also get to know about how animals are moving in different weather conditions. So here you see how turtles are using the currents of the sea. And this is very important because we also get to know how the animals are responding to climatic conditions, like, for example, the cyclone that we just recently had in India. That how did different animals respond to it, or how did animals manage? We have no information because right now we do not have such technology. However, some of the new and bright aspect of using such technology is also about understanding, uh, using their knowledge of the world and using their knowledge for our benefit. So here, for example, we were able to study goats moving in the Italian mountains in Etna, and we put GPS loggers on them, different sensors, and we learned that if before the earthquake, actually the movement of the goats and cows can help us predict the, the earthquake. That means that we have human technology, of course, to predict these things, but we can also use knowledge of these animals, and based on their movements and their behavior patterns, we can predict how natural calamities are going to happen. This is going to be extremely important in future for us when we are dealing with such potent issues. And it is always interesting to know what animals can provide us besides how can we use their senses to actually predict such information. So with that idea, there is this concept of Internet of Animals where we can say that different animals give us data, and then we form these network in which different kind of information transfers, and we can connect this through globally and understand these various patterns or what is actually happening around us. Creating awareness is also very, very important. So one of these articles, for example, I came across some years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, that one of the cranes was seen, and there is also need to create some awareness, right? Because as you can see in the articles, there are various speculations against using technology. So of course, sometimes uh, some animals get into trouble, but that's not necessarily because of use of such technology. But I can show a positive example for creating awareness of such technology as well. Like this is the work of WII in India, where they actually used satellite tags to put on armored falcons, which were killed in thousands. The success story is famous for conservation, that after they tag, they name them on the villages of Nagaland and Manipur, uh, and then they release them. And now, because of this active reporting or creating active awareness about their migration patterns, the villagers are protecting these animals and also celebrating when annual migration. This is the footage that you see from Tamenglong, where thousands of birds come every year. I was fortunate enough to go there and actually do the tagging 2 years ago with the researchers of WII. So this is one of the positive examples that how actually a scientific activity is creating change in people's behavior. And with that, I would like to end the talk and very open towards discussing how we can use such technologies to study or protect wildlife of India. Thank you.
Mm, Thank you, Hemal sir. It was very wonderful presentation. And now the chat box is open for the questions. Everyone, please ask your questions in the chat box. Hemal sir, would you like to
Sorry.
should I take the question, or you will read it and you will answer it?
So I'm reading a question: how do painted stork bird migration in Gujarat? Uh, Unfortunately, um, painted stock. So in India, current situation is that we have a lot of problems in using satellite tagging. So BNHS also is one of the primary organization doing that. But they have also not gotten permission until recently. I think they are going to tag flamingos now. But in India, it's very difficult because of this. I think because of two things. One is that people are we have still not created this environment where we support such technologies, because there is a perceived threat that such loggers can be used to spy against us, and we have uh, troubling neighbors, and this is something that is uh, said as a sign of concern. However, I mean, again, like being a scientist, I think that this is something in which we need to get into it. However, I think now with more and more development, hopefully we will be able to tag uh, or use such technology more and more um, in India. But right now, the tagging situation in India is pretty less. I would recommend BNHS had a book on bird atlas, and there they had the tagging information there. But so far, it's picking up. It's not that much. Then Rajas Khandekar, how do you exactly tag an animal for tracking? So there are various ways of tracking. It's just like a backpack, like we carry in the school. We put it back of the birds. I think you will find great deal of videos on YouTube. If you want to watch the tagging of Amur falcons, you should check out this. There's one movie that I made on YouTube called Magic in the Manipuri Sky. If you see that, you will be able to see how we actually put on the tags and on the birds. And the next question is, how is the untagging done? So untagging is a very difficult process. Usually, when you tag an animal, it is very much going to live with that tag. Uh, and sometimes this is very important to know lifelong information. For example, one of our stars of Amur Falcon family, a long leg, is being tagged from last 5 years, and it's providing data from last 5 years. So here I will play the video again, and if you see, you will, after about half of the video, you will see some birds moving from India to Africa. Those are Amur Falcons. Just check it out. And that's so, I mean, this video basically shows you how much tagging information we have from India. And but we still, of course, need a lot more. I think this is somehow, yeah. Okay. Then there is a question on integration of studies with eBird database and what are. So eBird database is a purely citizen science database, which is created by Cornell University. It is great to have that, and one can integrate that. However, so far I think so if you check Movebank, which is, it's basically the counterpart of eBird. Movebank has all the information which scientists all across the world have provided. I think you can combine both. However, um, it's important to know what we want to study. So when we take eBird data, we can only get sparse information. Sparse information meaning it's a bit better than ringing data. So we used to in the past ring the birds. I ring the bird in India. Somebody sees it in Mongolia and says, "I've seen this bird," and then you know that this bird is in Mongolia, but you don't know how this bird reached Mongolia, or you don't know which areas it has access. It's similar with eBird, a bit more resolution. I think you can do a lot by combining these informations. Eventual goal should be to combine these informations because that's how we bring a lot of citizens as part of science. However, so far I'm not aware in our institute if somebody has done combined both the data and done that. I think there is another question on what is the current situation in India with regard to using such tech. So as I mentioned that it's improving. I think we are, so I have a colleague who used drones to study black bugs in Gujarat, which was a fantastic project. So that is happening. Camera traps are now being involved for sensors. So that is pretty wonderful. In India, I think we have we have a two-edged sword where the wildlife protection is great and that helps us, the wildlife protection law, but it is also too harsh on the scientists, and therefore sometimes as a scientist it is very very difficult to get permission to use to actually capture animal and tag it, and often enough that leads to conflicts within the system. So I think but again, I think things are moving towards the positive direction. There is a lot of interest. There are a lot of institutions like ISC in Bangalore or A3 who are doing such studies. So I think it is slowly increasing. However, of course, in my opinion, we need a stronger voice in terms of awareness, because like what we are doing right now here, exchanging ideas, when we will have more awareness of these ideas and this kind, then people will be, uh, we can force uh, the change in terms of how to use such technology and how to get more out of, how to understand more about what is happening with the species in India. Because I think currently we have about, as I said, more than 350 birds coming to India, but we virtually have absolutely no information on more than 300 birds of how they're actually coming. And most of the times we get information while the birds are somehow, let's say, tagged in Africa or Mongolia and so on. But I maintain my statement, and I think that I've met some wonderful people who are trying to change this situation and use more and more tech to, especially also in Wildlife Institute of India. There's great work happening in there. So please give one example that technology you mentioned gave some positive results in conservation of a particular species. Now, that's a very interesting question. I think there are a lot, and for example, you can check from white stork information or any other information. However, I should point out that our institute is basically funded for fundamental research. That means that we do not directly get involved in large scale conservation activities. However, The research results are open. The data that we have is open for others to use in terms of then making policy making decisions. So actually very good recent example would be the census report at Bodensee. So we live here at the lake where we have a lot of species which come from Russia and Eastern Europe while in winter migrate here. So some species come here and some go to India actually. So like gadwals or northern pintail or stuff like that. And these numbers have reduced because the ecology around the lake has changed. And this is a negative news. However, it was when the report was submitted this year of 10 years of work, then it got a lot of attention in Germany, in the political scene, and it moved a lot of people, or either motivated a lot of people to talk about it and then bring change in this direction. Uh, I don't know how many questions I should take. Maybe I should just pick some more now because there are a lot.
Yeah,
Try to shorten my answers then because I
yeah.
don't want to disappoint anyone. What experiments can we do at home with insects? Actually, with insects, there is going to be a super cool studies with WI that I know that they are going to put radars, use radars to. So the radars that we have on boats usually use radars for communication or whatever. The same radar, if you point upwards, you can see insects moving around. So they are going to try to study insect migration from India to Africa, the dragonfly, which nobody has done so far. So that's something very new and interesting that is happening or going to happen soon. Uh, can we communicate with animals and birds? Uh, I will leave that because I don't think that's that the communication as understood by human communication. I don't think so. What are the experiments? Tagging insects would be challenging, and how is it done? What amount of technology is used? So actually, tagging of insects is done. But what we can't do is that we cannot design tags which are able to like send information through GSM or something like that. So what happens currently is that you put really small RF radio frequency based tags, and then you have to, when the insect is moving, you have to move with the insects. So this is super big challenge. We are trying to solve it, of course, by designing better tags. But I think the current state of the art is that you have these small sensors on them, and then you have to. So the researchers in our institute sometimes actually drive, or we use a plane to fly with the insects. That means you have a signal coming from the insect, and then you try to fly the plane in the range of some kilometers and keep getting the data. So, and once you lose the insect, you lose the insect, I guess. But that's how it is currently happening. It's super challenging. I agree, very difficult, but not impossible. There are ways in which it is happening. Cost of tagging single animal. It usually depends on the animal or on the tag. Currently, this technology is extremely expensive, and that is also one of the prohibitive factors for countries like us to be able to use it. They could cost from anywhere between 80,000 to 1 lakh or even more. But now the costs are reducing because now with the phone development, the technology is becoming better and better. So when we use these uh, smartphones with smaller sensors, smaller processors, smaller acceleration, the same technology can be used to smaller and smaller tags. And this is what we see. Again, this depends a lot on supply and demand. So I think the costs are still very high. It is also prohibitive, but this is something that we are working towards to change. So for example, the ICARUS project, would be one of the successes that once that project commences, probably we will be able to bring down the cost substantially, like half of what currently is there. um, is signal or radiation that is being sent out of these tags in any way harmful to the animal which is attached? That is unlikely, because now I think there have been studies, like these kind of studies are happening since quite a lot of years. And in many animals, it has, especially if you have a really big animal with a very small tag, it is not seen that it causes any problems. I think major problems is in terms of how to design it in a good way. So many times what happens is that when you tag, for example, these collar tags for tigers or leopards, when you put these big collar tags, they don't really like it, and sometimes it can get uncomfortable, or an animal can get stuck somewhere. However, the signal itself is not known so far to, yeah, but there could be, I mean, again, point blank answer is that so far it doesn't show any kind of worse effect. Is tagging allowed in China? Yes, actually, there are a lot of Chinese scientists who do tagging. And again, trying to think it in a way that tagging can be used for spying is a very crude idea. Because if you imagine, for example, if I put a tag on a bird which is going from India to China, and I want to use that for spying, I have to be able to send the bird where I want to spy, right? How am I going to do that? First of all, nobody even knows most of these birds, how are they crossing Himalayas, and which areas they are going to. So if we don't know where are they going, how can you, unless then the idea is that, okay, whatever information the bird gets, we can use it, but then still, how do you transmit this information? And what kind of technology do you use that? Because again, like as I mentioned, so far the best technologies are GSM based data transmission, or they transfer GPS points or something. And how is that exactly useful? So it's very vague idea of using, like putting cameras on birds to spy and stuff. I mean, if you put cameras, you use a phone, right? If you turn on the video camera, how long is the battery going to last? And how can you make it small enough? Because of course, if you make it super big with a big battery pack, the bird is not going to fly. So I think that's the thing that uh, we need to create awareness on these topics, because this is exactly something that is bottleneck for the science many times, where there is not a right understanding of what exactly is happening. And therefore yeah, then I think, are these studies really useful? Looking at current state of the wildlife, it is ignorance of government passing in mining and hydro projects. uh, Again, if studies are done, then they are useful. So it's a thing that when not only current government, I mean, not only talk about India, it's globally an issue that we are dealing with, because we are all needing many resources, and population is growing, and at the same time we need to conserve. So I would say actually these technologies are extremely useful in these times, because they give us proof. Without proof, you cannot stop anything. And this is what happens generally, where any projects are given, nobody has significant proof to prove that this area is being used by such and such animals or such and such species. If there is no proof, you can talk a lot about it, but can't do much about it. So I think actually it is helpful. What would be the battery life of the tag? Uh, Actually, many tags are solar tags, so that's really helpful. That doesn't help for animals who move at night, or in dense canopy, as you wrote, Siddharth. But I think, yeah. So there are different ways, and sometimes the battery dies, and that is it. So I think these are some limitations that we currently live with. There are, in case of mammals, usually when you can't use solar, like again elephants or tigers, whatever. Uh, when you have automatic pop-out tags. So that means when the battery is over, it automatically detaches itself from the animal and sends a last location so that you can go and pick up the tag again. So that's also something that is currently done. What do animals used to have interaction? What animals do usually tend to have interaction with animals? Going to pass that. Thank you. Our falcon, Iran tagged in Tamenglong this year. So this is super cool. I have somebody, I don't know the name, but this person has mentioned Amur Falcon Chiluan Irang tagged in a Tamenglong this year, has now reached the breeding ground in Amurland in Siberia. So this is live tracking information that all of you can access for Amur falcons, which is great. It's lovely to see how these animals are going from Siberia to Nagaland, Manipur to Somalia, and then to Africa. And of course, whoever wrote this is following the movements of the birds. So this is really exciting. This is what we want actually, that more and more people know, more and more people are aware, and then we can do more of such stuff. So of course, with certain institutions, like also the work that BNHS does. If it's okay, I'd be interested in getting in touch. Oh. Okay, my email information will be provided by, so you can find me or just Google my name with Max Planck Institute. You will find me, and I'm happy to take queries on email too. So there are a lot of questions regarding actually talking to animals, and that's, I think it's a bit of a misconception because we tend to put these human feelings on animals, which is not exactly right. I think every animal is different, like me, and it should remain this way. Yes, I think that brings us mostly towards end of the session, I guess, because a lot of thank you all who actually praised the information and presentation. And yeah, that's very helpful to see that so much enthusiasm is happening. Before closing, I would really like to thank BNHS group, especially Raju sir. He has been in touch with me since last 3 years, and we have exchanged a lot of ideas. Lovely work being done in CES and other centers to educate people. And I think this is the good way forward. And I hope, I mean, yeah, I hope that next time when you are interested in some wildlife, you ask these questions about how they are doing something and what they are doing, and then try to find out what is the information available and share this. Because I think, I mean, all of you are generally very concerned, which is nice, but we need to share this information with more and more people, I think, because this is how we will somehow bring a change in the system. So yeah, that would be my end message. And thanks very much for very encouraging messages. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful webinar and your closing remarks. So with this, I guess I would now conclude this session. And in case of any queries, you may please contact us at envis@bnhs.org. And have a very good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.